Okay, so in this lesson, what we're going to do is lay out the property lines that we're going to design our house for. So whenever you're designing a house, it's a lot easier, or you should be designing it for the specific piece of property that you're working on. So we have a property right here, and the lines are already drawn in representing the property. I'm going to show you how to do that, basically how I input that information. So I'd take the deed description, and then I would come over to Massing and Site, tab, and then click on the property lines. And I could do it two different ways. I could create by entering distances and bearings, or I could create by sketching. I always do the create by entering distances and bearings. So this is the screen that pops up whenever I do that. And whenever you look at the deed description, it's always going to have a distance, whether it's north or south. The bearing, which is basically the angle that it's moving at. And whenever you look at this, the bearing, it has 90 degrees, feet, seconds. So what that really is it's a way of breaking down the angles into smaller increments. Because if you're stretching an angle over a long distance, you could have a lot of different air, even in 1 degrees. So basically we have degree, minutes, seconds. So 1 degree is equal to 60 minutes. So within a degree, there's 60 minutes also. Then we can break down a minute even further into seconds. So in 1 minute, we have 60 seconds. So this is not the foot symbol, and this is not the inches symbol. This is degrees, minutes, seconds. Okay, so right now I would be going through and putting new ones in here. I've already gone ahead and added these, so I can click on this property line and edit table to show you what they look like. So the first thing that I want to point out is the distance. Right now the distance is in feet, and it's in decimal feet, so it's 92.497 feet. So a lot of times whenever you're doing Revit projects, doing an architectural project, it would be in feet and inches. The problem with that is whenever you're looking at a deed description, they're not going to give you the feet broke down into inches and fractions of inches. So what I can do is whenever I'm going through and adding these property lines, I can go to Manage, and I can look at my project units. And for right now, I could change this. Your default's going to be feet and fractional inches. I can show you what that looks like in the property lines. So it would be 92 feet 5 and 247 256 of an inch. So instead of doing that, what I want to have, go back to Manage, Project Units. Instead of that, I'm going to start out with decimal feet. And I say OK, and whenever I edit my table, I end up with 92.497 feet. So after I enter in all of this information, I say OK, and I can place the property lines right here. So right now, over in my project browser, I have this on level 1. That's where I'd actually start doing my floor plan. And I also have a site plan, so I have my floor plan there. Right, and my property lines are showing up there as well. And I can move these elevation symbols out of the way so they're not right on top of my property lines. And then I could actually go through and make sure that the location of the camera, if I click on the triangle part, it shows me the location of the camera. Make sure that those are still in a good location. I'll this one also. Okay, so the next thing is whenever I start designing on level 1, I don't want to have to add all of my walls at some strange angle that's perpendicular to this line, because it's going to make it very difficult to design the house, especially whenever this angle isn't a 45. It's close to a 45, but what I really want to do is I want to maximize the usage of this land, so I want to be somewhat perpendicular to these lines. So the easiest way to do this, first of all, I'm going to find out exactly what the angle is. So I'm going to draw a line from that corner straight over, and then I'm going to go to my Annotate tab, and I'm going to do an angular dimension from there to there. I'm going to bump up my scale too so I can see what this actually looks like. I'll change it to 1 equals 20. So I have 43.3 degrees right there. So what I can do, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. 43.3 degrees. What I can do now is I can go to my site plan, and I can click on this little gizmo in the middle, and I can tell this angle to true north. So I'm going to change this to 43.3 degrees. And I don't like how that looks, so I'm going to change this to a minus 43.3 degrees. And what that does is it basically makes this changes the true north and the project north. So the project north, I want it so that whenever I come in here and draw lines, and let's say I just designed a building that looks something like this, that they're actually going to be perpendicular to property lines. Now I didn't actually change the property lines. All I did was I changed the angle from true north to project north. So what I did is I established a project north. So true north is always going to be true north, the direction, but now I have a project north that allows me to draw this differently. So that is on my site plan, and we kind of have this backwards right now. So what we're going to do is, on my site plan, I want to actually see, and my site plan is basically if I was flying over with a drone taking a picture of the property lines and the property features, utilities, and any structures that I have on the property. So on the site plan, I don't want the orientation to be project north. I want it to be true north. So I can set it to that. I'm going to go ahead and delete these walls so I can show you how this works. On level 1, I do want it to be project north. So the interesting thing is on level 1, it looks like this. On site, it looks like this. Site is the actual, this is the true north, and level 1 is the project north. So what I can do, just to demonstrate how this works, I'll draw some walls on level 1. And you can see whenever you go to the site plan, they are still perpendicular to this. So the next thing is, if we go to massing and site, what we can do is we can actually choose an actual location. Actually, this is on manage. So if I click on this location button, what I can do is it's going to load a mapping service. It's going to default to Boston. So I'm going to, let's try changing this to Clearfield, PA 16830. That's going to get us a little bit closer. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and I can get a bigger map to work with. Keep zooming in, pick this up and move it. I know I'm somewhere in this vicinity, and I'm getting closer and closer. Jump over the other side of the river, and if I zoom in, I can start to see that this is my property, and I'm basically right about there. I'm going to go ahead and use daylight saving time. So right now, I just assigned an actual location to the property, and I could look at the site information and the weather information, and I say okay. And then the next thing, to actually utilize that, I'm going to go through and turn the sun path on. So I'm going to turn sun path on and ask me, the sun will not display because relative to view is selected in sun settings. What would you like to do? Use specified project location, date, and time instead. That's what I want to do. Okay, so what I basically did is I put this project on an actual piece of ground, the actual location, and it's showing me exactly where the sun would be at any given time throughout the year, at any given date. So I can also go right click on this and look at the sun settings, and I can change it from still to a single day to a multi-day, and I could pick the different dates. So I'm going to look at a single day, and I'm going to use today's date, 11/15/2017, and I'm going to go from sunrise to sunset with 1 hour time intervals, with the ground plane level at level 1, because I don't have any other levels set up at this point. So now that I have that set, I can basically look at the sun path. So right now I can see where the sun is and that it travels the path of this yellow line. And I can pick the sun up and I can move it along that line to see what time of day we're actually getting sun. So the cool thing about this is if I go back into my plan and I go to level 1, and let's just say I start adding some generic windows in here. I'm just going to add a bunch of windows, and let's say I wanted to have some sun rooms, or some rooms that have a lot of sun coming in. I'm bringing as much light into the building as possible. I'm just going to throw a bunch of windows in here. And I can turn the sun path on in this view as well. It's view dependent, but it's not really going to do anything for me. And it changes the time too, the date. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that off in this view. But I am going to switch to my 3D view. And I'm going to turn it on in my 3D view and use the specified project location. And what I can do now is I can also turn my shadows on, and you could actually see where you're going to be getting sun different times of the day. So if you're going to design a breakfast nook or a kitchen that you're going to be in the morning and you want a lot of sunlight, then you can actually position that exactly where you need to see the most sun. So as you can see from this diagram, this side of the building isn't going to get a whole lot of light, direct sunlight. You would just get ambient light coming through the windows. And you can also see that as I change, let's go to December 21st, you can see the sun gets lower in the sky. So the further I get into winter, actually past the winter to the winter solstice, I get lower in the sky with the sun. And then the closer I get to spring, the higher in the sky it gets. And then if I'm looking at a summer month, I can actually see the sun getting higher in the sky. So it really helps me position windows, skylights, and get the most out of trying to bring sun into the building. So if I'm going to spend a lot of money on windows to get light into the building, then I'm going to maximize my windows on this south, mostly on the southern exposure side, possibly on the east and possibly on the west, and then on this northern side I'm not going to have that. And the further you develop this, whenever you start doing interior renderings where you can actually see inside of the building and set up cameras to see inside the building, you can see exactly where the sun's going to be. You can see your shadows. So it makes it a very useful design tool. Alright, so the next thing with this preliminary site planning layout is if I go back to my site plan, I can go through, I can move these property lines to position them where I need them to be. What I also want to do is I want to label these. So if I go to my Annotate tab, I can tag by category, and I want to select the property line. It's telling me that there's no tag loaded for property line segments. Do you want to load one now? So I say yes, and it takes me to this folder here. I want to look at annotations. So under annotations, I'm going to go into civil because site plans are civil drawings, and I'm going to find the property line tag. I can click on that, and then I can choose the property line. So I'm going to uncheck this leader. I'm going to drop my property line there, 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 and there. Hit escape to get out of it. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to put property line setbacks on. Now from our site, whenever we actually look at real pictures of our site, we're working with lot 11. What we can see is that we actually have the roadway out front. So we're going to have our main entrance somewhere close to the front. If we're going to have a driveway also that we'd have to connect to this road. And you can see these dashed lines or hidden lines on there that represent the property or the setback lines. So setback lines are basically lines, imaginary lines on the property that say that you cannot build within close proximity to your actual property lines. So you don't want to be building a building right on top of your property line. So we have setbacks to keep you from doing that. And if we look at the real image, you can see that as well. We have the road out front, and our lot is somewhere in this vicinity. So to actually add these setback lines on here, what I want to do is a detail line. And whenever I do the detail line, I can choose from several different line styles. So right now our property lines have this double dash, which is a phantom line. So we're going to choose something different than that. I'm going to go ahead and choose hidden lines. And what I want to do is I want to draw these perpendicular to my property lines. I'm just going to draw a line, or parallel to my property lines, parallel and perpendicular. So I'm just going to draw these on here, and it'll tell me whenever I'm perpendicular or parallel. And I don't actually want them touching. And then we're going to actually add dimensions onto these so we can have the proper setbacks. So on my annotate tab, I'm going to try this aligned, and it's not giving me the aligned. Won't allow me to do that. So I'll try using my temporary dimension, which disappeared. I'll try linear. It's not giving me that either. Can't create dimension highlight reference not parallel to first selection. So it's telling me that this is not parallel to that. So we'll try this a little different way. Alright, so our problem was whenever we were drawing those lines on there, or detail lines, they weren't parallel because it was trying to draw perpendicular to these lines whenever I was drawing this line, and we don't have 90-degree angles in the corners for all of those. They're slightly off. They look like 90-degree angles, but they're not. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to draw a detail line, and I'm going to draw lines right over top of the existing property lines. So to do that, I'm just going to use my snaps and select a line, draw a line right over top of it, pick it up and move it. And I'm just going to continue to do that. For each one of the property lines. And now it's giving me parallel instead of perpendicular. And then I can go back to my aligned, annotate aligned, and I'm going to add dimensions to each of these. And it's telling me that one isn't parallel, so I'll try doing that one again. And I'll have my align dimensions on there. Okay, so now I have dimensions on there, and the whole reason for putting dimensions on there is I can create these setbacks. So I'm going to click on the line that I want to move, and then I'm going to click on this dimension, and I'm going to change this to 10. So my side setbacks are going to be 10 feet. And again, I have another problem with that line, so I'll draw that one on there again. It's giving me perpendicular, so now I have parallel. Pick that up. move it, add my aligned dimension on there. So I redrew that line, made sure that it was parallel. I click on the line and I change this to 10. The front offset, or the front setback, is going to be 10 as well. And then the back is going to be 20. And then I can come in here and use my fillet to join them together. And this hidden line rectangle basically represents the location that I can build within. And you can see it doesn't show up on level 1 because it's a detail line. We could possibly try to copy that. So I can do copy to clipboard, aligned, paste aligned to selected views, and I'm going to copy it to level 1. And then whenever I go into level 1, my setback's in there. So I can use this to start designing, and now I can start actually laying out the site plan, or the building according to the site.